Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever part of the world that you are in. Happy Saturday. It should be Saturday for just about all of you watching, I think. It might be Sunday for a couple of you way, way, way over there, far, far, far east. But happy weekend. Hope you had a great week. Hope you're having a great month. We are almost in the fourth quarter. We are almost into my favorite season of the year. The weather's finally getting better. Um, Finally through this brutal Atlanta summer. And missed you guys. Wanted to jump on and talk about obviously the big fight coming up later today in London at Wembley. And those of you who follow me on social media, you've seen my tweets and my posts saying, this is the one fight that I've really been looking forward to on the schedule this month. Um, we've had some good fights, some interesting matchups recently and stuff, but this was the one that stood out to me. By the way, we don't have phones right now. My phones are down. I don't know what the hell's going on with the software. I'll have to look into that. Probably some update or something, but yeah, so my phone isn't talking to the software right now, so we don't have phones. But you guys can get in on the chat. Let me know how you feel about the fight. We'll preview that, and then I want to also review some recent action and just give some thoughts on some news and rumors and all that good stuff. Israel Kano in the chat says the fight last night was good. Munguia is getting better. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, to be 100% honest. I didn't get a chance to catch that live, but Jaime Munguia is getting better. I do think the rounds with Canelo could only make him even better. And he has shown improvement in recent years. And a lot of people that were just calling him a bum and all that was really unfair, man. Really unfair. He's definitely gotten better. But so as we are deep into September, October is right around the corner. As I mentioned, fourth quarter right around the corner, or 3 quarters through with the year. It got me to thinking, how would you guys rate if we had to do a 3 quarters of the year rating for the year in boxing so far? What would you give it? You know, if you count the whole year, I mean, if you look next month, we're getting an undisputed light heavyweight championship between Beterbiev and Bivol. That's been one of the most anticipated fights for real fight fans in recent years, right? So the winner of that is no less than the fourth best fighter in the world, pound for pound. And in terms of accomplishments and everything in recent resume, they'd be right up there, just behind, but right up there with guys like Usyk, Inoue, Crawford, what I call the big three. So we're going to have a big four by the end of the year, or actually by the end of October. So let's include that. If you look at everything, and then we've got an undisputed heavyweight champion earlier this year. Now the IBF screwed that up. We'll talk about that in a minute. But whatever. Alexander Usyk is still the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, right? And they're going to do a rematch, him and Fury. That's going to be at the very end of the year. So you're going to have 2 fights with the 2 best heavyweights in the world in 1 year. That's pretty good. But there's like every other year in boxing, it's a mixed bag. And a lot of the issues that we have in the sport that I've talked about extensively on this channel over the years still remain and are still big problems, right? So you can't mention the good without mentioning the not so good. You have to talk about the whole thing. And I would include all that in my rating of the year. I think that inactivity is still a big issue. And it used to, it only was like American fighters for a while, but now it's kind of a global thing. But it is particularly evident with American fighters. The inactivity is a problem. And certain platforms have not had a very busy schedule this year. So PBC on Amazon, I want to say they've had 4 shows so far, including this last Canelo show. And now there's rumors of a Javante Davis fight coming up at the end of the year. That would be their 5th show. And so I'll talk about that in a minute. But that would be 5 shows for them in 1 whole year, their first year on this new platform. And all 5 are pay-per-view. And the last one was $90. This Canelo Berlango fight was $90. So I mean that's a big deal, dude. That's not good. Now we're hearing that Canelo fight sold pretty well. I'll talk about that, which is good. That's positive, but it's Canelo, right? It's Canelo. Canelo's gonna sell. So that's an issue. Inactivity. And then there's certain divisions that are just dead, bro. Um, Middleweight is dead. And the co-main of that Canelo Berlanga fight kind of just I don't know, re-amplified just how dead that division is. And I'll talk about that. But also welterweight, dead. That division's dead. And those are two historic divisions. One of the, two of the original 8. Heavyweight's been pretty good. And for my money, heavyweight's probably been the most interesting division this year, and maybe overall in recent years. With we talked about Fury and Usyk, but then there's Anthony Joshua, right? He's fighting tonight against Daniel Dubois, who's been on a good run after a lot of people wrote him off a while ago, right? He's been on a good run, proven himself as a top 10 guy. Jile Zhang is made for some very interesting fights. Martin Bakole, that dude had a breakout performance against Jared Anderson in Los Angeles this summer. That dude's a problem. He's a problem. A fun problem for us fight fans, but not a fun problem for the heavyweights of the world. And then Joseph Parker has had this reemergence, right? And now he's back in the top 5 in the heavyweight division. He's looking great. He's been in a great run, and that's been fun to see. Parker's always had a lot of potential, and you can see the class there. He does have skill. His defense, I think, is underrated. You can hit him, of course, but he's been an interesting run. So, all these guys together have just made the heavyweight division fun. Some have lost fights, won fights. It's a mixed bag, but they've made the division fun, and they've fought each other. So heavyweight's been fun, man. I've enjoyed it this year more so than any other division, I think. But yeah, some divisions are just dead, right? So anyway, it's a mixed bag 3 quarters through. If you look, ahead at some of the matchups we have over the fourth quarter of the year, overall, pretty good year, but some good, some bad. Naoya Inoue, man, he's been on a heck of a run. He's been a lot of fun to watch. Crawford only fought once this year, right? And it wasn't a scintillating performance. It was a decisive win for him. I thought Crawford beat Madrimov. I didn't see any controversy with him getting the decision. I know some people thought Madrimov won. I thought Crawford won that fight. And I actually watched it the second time, and I think he did little things in there that maybe some people didn't catch live, that kind of made him the boss in the ring that night. He had the ring generalship, and he won that fight, in my opinion, pretty clearly. But it was not a scintillating performance. It certainly wasn't dominant. It wasn't what he did against Errol Spence. So in the last 2 years, Crawford's fought 2 times. He's the best American fighter by a mile, by a country mile, as they say. So that's a problem. So there's some good and some bad. Okay. All right. Let's review really quickly. Or what? Before that, before we review Canelo Berlanga, I want to hit some news and rumors. So apparently, Gervonta Davis, the rumor is, and if it's changed, please correct me, guys. Okay, but the latest information I've seen is that he is fighting Lamont Roach, and some people have thrown around dates in November, but I've also heard December 21st, which is the same date as Fury Usyk, their rematch, which I think is back in Riyadh. So time-wise, those two there wouldn't be a conflict, but just in terms of pay-per-view dollars, because both would be pay-per-views, there's a lot of people out there that probably are going to want to watch the heavyweight fight. Anyway, I'd say the heavyweight fight rather than the lightweight fight. But Javante Davis, if Lamont Roach is the opponent, Davis has a belt at lightweight. He is considered one of the top lightweights in the world right now. Lamont Roach is a junior lightweight or super featherweight, however you want to word it. And he is a contender in that division. He's never had the title, never beat an elite level opponent. I don't think he's fought an elite level opponent yet. And so this is another potential matchup for Javante Davis that's going to have fans groaning. I get accused all the time of being a Tank hater. I'm really not. I'm just trying to tell the truth about what I see. I would have zero issue with this fight if it was on regular Amazon Prime, but they're probably going to put it on pay-per-view. It's going to be at least $80 to watch this. And it's just not a pay-per-view worthy fight. It just isn't. Now, I should mention, Canelo Alvarez just fought a guy who had no business being in the ring with him. It shouldn't have been on pay-per-view, but he's Canelo Alvarez. And it was on a Mexican holiday. Canelo brings the Mexican and Mexican-American fan base with him. From a business perspective, that worked. But Tank fighting another guy that he's going to be a massive favorite to beat, and then putting that back on pay-per-view, that's a tough sale, man. So I wanted to share this tweet I posted yesterday. I'll read it for those of you listening on the audio. I made a post on X. What are your thoughts on Gervonta Davis's pay-per-view opponents? And I listed them all out. So, guys, since 2020, since the pandemic hit, basically this entire decade so far, Javante Davis has fought exclusively on pay-per-view. Lamont Roach would be his 8th fight this decade, okay? We're at the very end of 2024, so that's 5 years we're in, right? Because remember, 2020 counts, so that's 5 years. 8 fights, 5 years, all 8 of them pay-per-view. Let's look at the opponents. Leo Santa Cruz. Now, Leo Santa Cruz at his best was a good fighter. Never great, wouldn't get my vote for the Hall of Fame, but he'll probably get in. He's a darling of the Southern California boxing press, and that's where all the fight press is now. So I think he'll get in, but he's not going to get my vote. And that's no disrespect to him. He's just not on that level. However, he was a bantamweight for most of his career, up to maybe featherweight, kind of in between those divisions. Then he fights Tank, and I can't remember if this was at 30, 35. I can't remember the exact weight it was at. But by that point, Santa Cruz was well past his best. In fact, after that fight, getting knocked out by Tank, he fought one more time, I think, just to kind of get back in the win column, and basically that was it. So he was at the very tail end of his career, right? But to Tank's credit, he did what he's supposed to do against that level of opponent at that point in their career. Got the big flashy knockout, the memes of that knockout, or I should say the GIFs, the clips of that knockout were all over social media afterwards. So he did his job. But that's 2020. So in 2021, he fights Mario Barros in his lone fight at 140 to grab one of the WBA's 400 belts in that division. And then he fights Isaac Cruz in 2021. The promotion has spent the last 3 years trying to prove to us that Isaac Cruz is an elite level lightweight. He never was. And now I think he's at 140, right? 2022, one fight that year for Tank, and he fights Rolly Romero, who, again, the promotion tried to convince everyone this is an elite level guy. He has since shown us otherwise. 2023, Hector Luis Garcia, which is another guy they moved up from a lower weight. And then Ryan Garcia, who they killed at a catchweight rehydration clause. There are all sorts of other weird clauses about what he could eat and drink and all this kind of stuff. Good performance. That was a breakthrough fight commercially. It did over 1 million pay-per-view buys. I argued at that time that the overwhelming majority of those buys came from Ryan Garcia's side. I was called a Tank hater. I was beat up on social media. Guess what? I was right again, because when Javante Davis fought Frank Martin earlier this year, it bombed. So Tank is not at a point where he can carry a pay-per-view promotion himself the way Canelo just did against Edgar Berlanga and several other promotions. Canelo fought Billy Joe Saunders here in the United States and did a record indoor crowd for a guy that nobody in America knew, right? So Canelo can do that. He's the one fighter from North America right now who could do that. Tank ain't it, at least not yet. And I think a big part of that is because he's never gone through the gauntlet and fought the top guys the way Canelo did at different points when he was coming up. So anyway, and now it's Lamont Roach in 2024. So I put that out there on X and asked you guys what you thought, and the comments are pretty clear. You guys have some strong feelings about that. If I can show another tweet, this is a poll that I did. I've got over 300 votes. If both fights happen on December 21st and you can only watch one, which fight would you be watching? Usyk versus Fury 2 or Davis versus Roach? Somehow only 95% of you said Usyk versus Fury 2. It should be 100%. But 4.8% of you out there said Davis versus Roach, which, okay, that's your prerogative. Totally your prerogative. But, if you're a diehard Gervonta Davis fan, I understand why you might put that answer. But, you're that's pretty extreme. Okay, so this is another fight with Javante Davis that I'm not going to be watching. And the last fight that Javante Davis has had that I watched live was his fight with Mario Barros. And the only and I was here in Atlanta. The only reason is because it was here in town and I was covering it for Ring TV. So you can pull up my article, it's still out there, right? That was it. That was a few years ago. And it's not that I'm hating on the guy. It's just I haven't been interested in any of the matchups. They certainly have not been worth my money on pay-per-view. And some of the recent matchups have been so one-sided that I didn't want to stay up to watch a mismatch. It wasn't even the money. It was, I got to get up at 6 a.m, or get up in the middle of the night to feed my baby. Me and my wife rotate nights. And, if it's the night that I got to get up in the middle of the night to feed the baby, I'm not going to stay up. I'm going to sleep, man. I'm getting some rest because I got to get up once or twice during the night. So it's hard to justify staying up to watch that. And just to keep the same energy, I should mention, I did not watch Canelo Berlanga live. It was a complete mismatch. It was a card of mismatches. So I'm keeping the same energy. I'm not just pointing it in one direction. I'm keeping the same energy. If it's a complete mismatch, it's hard to justify me staying up for it now with where I'm at in my life and what I've got going on with my family and stuff. It's just difficult to stay up till 2 a.m. to watch. I want to say Canelo Berlanga was like 18-1 or something like that. It was extraordinarily one-sided odds. Same thing with Tank versus Martin, and it'll be the same thing when he fights Roach. It'll be even more one-sided, I think, with the odds. So it's beside the money of it being on pay-per-view. I just can't justify staying up that late for a one-sided fight like that, especially when, like, today it's going to be around 6 p.m. Eastern time, ring walks between Joshua Dubois. I'm going to get to watch that while my little girls are eating dinner. I'm going to get them in their high chair, get them going with dinner, turn that shit on and watch it while I'm getting them fed, and be able to watch it all and stuff before we even start the girls' bedtime routine. It'll work perfect with my life right now. And it's an interesting matchup that, yes, Joshua is the favorite, and he should be. We'll talk about that. But Dubois has a shot. He has a shot. It's heavyweights. So anyway, before we get into the preview of that big heavyweight fight, let's quickly review Canelo Berlanga. I'm not even going to talk about the Raleigh Romero fight because it's useless. But Caleb Plant versus McCumbee. I wasn't surprised McCumbee put Plant down early. He just landed a really good shot, and Plant, to his credit, popped up and did what he was supposed to do from that point on. So McCumbee had his moment. Plant did not allow him to capitalize on the moment. A lot of people will focus on the knockdown, but they won't focus on what happened after the knockdown quite as much. It's a lot like Usyk when he fought Dubois. People talk about, it wasn't a low blow. It was a low blow. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Like, did the ref make the right call? Does it really matter? The ref made a call. Dubois had hurt Usyk. Whether you feel the punch was legal and it hurt him to the gut, or you felt it was illegal and it hurt him to the nuts, he was hurt, and Dubois could not finish or follow up on it. And that's on Usyk because Usyk stepped up and did what he had to do and stopped Dubois. So very similar in this fight. Not the same, obviously, but some similarities. Plant did what he was supposed to do, gets the W. And just in terms of action, two-way action, and guys like really going for the knockout, because McCumbee was going for it, dude. He was swinging for the fences. This fight might have been the most entertaining on the pay-per-view card, at least the first half of it. It was entertaining, and there was some two-way action there. I know some guys who have sparred Trevor McCumbee. Because he's from, I can't remember exactly, he's from somewhere in this part of the country. And I just know guys from, the gyms, the local gyms around here that have sparred with him, and they all say he's heavy-handed as hell. Dude's got really heavy hands. That's what they all say. So it didn't surprise me that he put Plant down. I did find it kind of a little annoying that Plant was like showboating and talking trash and playing to the crowd and all this stuff with an opponent that had never fought a ranked fighter in his entire career. I just have to mention that. It was a little like, okay, dude, have a little fun in there. Just get to business. He was playing it up round after round after round. And I'm like, dude, you're in there with a guy who's never fought a ranked fighter, and he puts you on your ass. Just get to work. So I got to bring that up. Okay, co-main. Danny Garcia, Erislandy Lara. Not surprised at all at the outcome of this fight. Thad had called into the show and talked about that fight and said that like weeks before it happened, the last episode of the show I did, he talked about that fight. And he felt strongly that there's a potential that Lara could get robbed if it went to the cards. And I kind of saw what he was talking about. If you just look at it from a promotional perspective, if they could get Danny Garcia a belt at 160, that gives Jermell Charlo a possible opponent and a route to a belt there. If it went to distance and it was close on the cards, I could totally see Danny Garcia getting the nod. He's also the American fighter. They're in Vegas. You know how that goes in Vegas, right? Particularly with Cubans. So I could see that. Lara, to his credit, didn't even give them a chance to screw him. He ended the show. Danny Garcia, no disrespect to him, but he looked like crap. But it wasn't surprising. Forget about the fact that he's over the hill. His heart isn't in it anymore and hasn't been for quite some time. And this was just securing some extra cash. But I mentioned this. I didn't do a preview on my channel. I just didn't have the time. But I jumped on some other podcasts that were previewing that card. And I mentioned in those podcasts, coming into this fight with Lara, Danny Garcia had fought once since 2020. Once since 2020. Okay. So he was been a semi-retired fighter this entire decade. And he had only had one fight north of 147. Remember, this guy started at 140. Only had a little run at welterweight, which he never beat an elite welterweight. He fought a couple of top guys, but he never beat a top guy at that division. But he had one fight north of 47. That was his last fight. It was at 154. And it wasn't a top-level opponent. And now he's going to fight at 160. And, of course, the WBA allows a guy who's never fought at 160 and had one fight at 154 and one fight in the last 4 years or whatever it was to fight for their middleweight belt. Why wouldn't the WBA allow that? That's what the WBA does. But so there's all of that, right? And so it's not at all surprising that Lara, was dominant in this fight. It's not that Lara fought amazing. It's just that Danny Garcia is done. He's done. So hopefully he walks into the sunset from here. Then we get to the main event. And I talked about the undercard fights. Those were showcases. Particularly the Caleb Plant fight. That was a showcase. It didn't quite look like a showcase. The Lara Garcia fight ended up being a showcase for Lara. Those were just one-sided fights, and none of them really belonged on a pay-per-view. There were some people excited for Lara Garcia because they thought maybe when you get two older guys, they get in there. Sometimes you get good action. right? And Lara has slowed down a little bit. He stands in the pocket more. Danny Garcia has landed some home run punches in the pocket in his career. Guys, that was at 140. You know, he didn't do that at 147. Certainly not at 54, wasn't going to do it at 60. I mean, looking back at that fight, it's like, how did anyone think that was going to be remotely competitive? I know it's 2020 hindsight, but when you look at the fact that Lara has been a middleweight his whole career and he's squeezed down the junior middleweight for most of it, but he's really been a legit middleweight for most of his career. He has super long arms, his arms are as long as a lot of heavyweights. Seriously, I've talked to guys that have sparred him too, and they say the same thing. Just a lot bigger, longer, stronger than Garcia, and a lot more active in recent years, and just more dialed in to boxing. It's his job. It's how he feeds himself. And for Garcia, it's kind of been a side thing this decade for him, right? It's been like it's a passion. It's something he loves. It's something he's good at, but it's not necessarily something that he's been dialed in, plugged in every day this decade, right? Like Lara. So all that showed. Okay, main event time. Canelo Berlanga. I remember when this fight was first announced, or when it was being talked about anyway. I want to say I talked about it on this channel. I know for sure I talked about it on other shows. I know I was on Ringside Reporter and talked about it there with Eric and Beeb. And I said right away, like, don't be surprised if this fight goes to distance. I said the same thing about the John Ryder fight. I said the same thing about the Jaime Munguia fight. Don't be surprised if this goes to distance because, guys, Canelo Alvarez has not had a knockout since he knocked out Caleb Plant. Funny how this all goes full circle, right? The guy who was on who opened up the pay-per-view card, or was on the undercard, I should say. I don't know if that was the opener or not. But that is, I want to say 6 fights ago, 6, 7 fights ago. Hasn't had a knockout since. I think it was he knocked out Plant, then he fought Bivol, lost that fight by shutout. I scored that 120-108. I don't know how you could give Canelo a single round of that fight with Bivol, which meant the judges had it 7-5. They're going to screw the Russian any chance they get. But from that point forward, Canelo has reeled off, I don't know, 5 or 6 straight wins. They've all gone the distance. So he's scored knockdowns. He dropped Munguia. He dropped Berlanga. And to their credit, those guys got up and kept fighting, especially Munguia. But Canelo wasn't able to close the show. Guys, he's not the same dude that he was at his absolute prime. He's had injuries. He has slowed down. You can get into all sorts of maybe conspiratorial talk about why his body's breaking down at times. I'm not going to even go there. But the guy, he has been fighting as a pro since he was basically a teenager. And he's had a lot of fights. He's had over 60 pro fights. So think about that. That's 60 camps, 60 pro fight camps. And then some of those fights have been pretty brutal. Those first 2 fights with Triple G, he took a lot of punishment in those fights. Canelo's chin is premium. It's his best asset, is his chin and his head movement. But Golovkin put a lot of hard leather on him in those fights. Bivol put some hard leather on him in their fight. And, you know, he took it, walked through it. Again, amazing chin. Might be the best chin I've seen. Certainly the best chin this century. It has to be, right? He's up there with some of the all-time greats in terms of just the durability in the chin. But that takes some toll on you. And when you've had over 60 pro fights, you start to slow down. And in terms of skills and experience and savvy and craft, he is absolutely among the best in the world still. But I'm looking at Canelo now kind of the way I started to look at Vladimir Klitschko in the last few years of his career after Emmanuel Stewart had died. Vlad still reeled off a bunch of wins, but there was some speed off the fastball. I was ringside for his fight with Bryant Jennings. I've talked about that in this show, and you could just see it. He just wasn't the same guy. And you could see it in fights before that. Just wasn't the same guy that he once was. Even though he was still winning and being dominant, He just wasn't the same guy. We saw that with Golovkin in the last few years of his career. I'm talking about before the third Canelo fight. That was just a cash out. He was winning, even dominantly at times, but he wasn't the same guy. That's where we are with Canelo. I actually think the comparison to Klitschko is a lot more applicable here because Klitschko had 60 fights, 60 plus fights, right? We're never going to see that at heavyweight again. And we're never going to see a guy like Canelo, a fighter have 60 plus fights, especially when you're the top guy in the sport. We're never going to see that again in the sport. It's never going to happen. So these guys, when you have that many fights, your craft and your experience can carry you through against most opponents. But when you get in there with a top dog, a young dog, a young, hungry dog, it's going to show. And when Klitschko got in there against Fury, he didn't look very good, right? That was a horrible fight. When he got in there against Joshua, he had some moments, but he was not able to capitalize on them. That's the way I'm looking at Canelo right now. And that's why I don't think we're going to see Canelo fight David Benavidez. I don't think we're going to see him fight the Beterbiev Bivol winner. I'd love to be proven wrong. But if and when he does, let's say he does, it's going to look like when Klitschko fought Fury, when Klitschko fought Joshua. Obviously, it's not going to be the exact same, all right? But I'm saying there will be parallels in terms of one guy clearly passed it, some speed off the fastball, and he's in there with a young, hungry lion. Now, I get it. Beterbiev, Bivol, they're not necessarily young. They're veterans themselves. They're at the tail end of their careers as well. But they have a lot more left in the tank than, in my opinion, than Canelo does right now. And they're also just bigger and stronger. Beterbiev just plows through people. We got to see how he looks against Bivol. We'll talk about that fight later on, as we get closer to it. But yeah, dude, I just, where Canelo is at this point in his career, he's just not that guy anymore. And listen, I don't mean any of this disrespectfully. I've talked about this on other shows. Canelo's got my vote first ballot. He's a Hall of Famer. That's a lock, right? I also recognize the fact that he has carried this sport in North America post-pandemic, this decade, the 2020s. I don't want to hear about no Javante Davis or no Jake Paul or no Ryan Garcia. No, it's been Canelo. He has carried this sport in North America in the 2020s. So he deserves tremendous respect for that, regardless of how you feel about his fights. If you won the close fights, lost them, I know there's a lot of controversy there. And then some of the things that happened outside the ring, I get it. I'm just saying, in terms of that, he's kind of held the sport on his shoulders recently. So the guy deserves credit. But where he is at in this stage of his career, I don't rate him as a pound-for-pound fighter anymore. I just don't. He's just not on the level of Usyk, Inoue, Crawford, Bivol, Beterbiev, Bam Rodriguez. He's not on the level of these guys. Nakatani, he's just not. Some of you out there might be like pounding the screen right now, yelling at me, but I'm right. I'm right. He was at one point absolutely on that level. He's just not that guy anymore. Again, I'd love to be proven wrong. Be awesome. If he got in there with Benavidez and whooped his ass, that'd be amazing. If he got in there against the Beterbiev Bivol winner and whooped their ass and became undisputed light heavyweight champion of the world, that would be amazing. That'd be one of the greatest accomplishments I've ever seen in boxing in my lifetime. But probably not going to happen. So he's going to fight guys like Berlanga for the rest of his career. And because he's Canelo Alvarez, he'll be able to do that. He'll be protected by certain sanctioning organizations, particularly the WBC. He'll be protected by the media. And since he's earned it, since he's actually fought the top guys before, he fought Floyd Mayweather before he was even close to being ready for that level of a fight, years before he was near his prime. He fought Golovkin twice. Did they wait him out a couple of years? Yeah, but he still fought him twice when he was still real close to his prime. He fought Lara when he didn't have to. So he's fought some top guys, all right? He's earned it. So he can kind of do whatever the hell he wants. He's not going to get any complaints from me. But I'm not necessarily going to be interested in staying up again till 2 a.m, to watch you in there against Edgar Berlanga. I'm just not. Wasn't surprised that he dropped Berlanga early on in that fight. Not surprising. Wasn't surprised that he couldn't follow up on it and Berlanga went to distance. I talked about these things on different podcasts. You guys can look. The receipts are out there. I'm not saying this after the fact. Again, it wasn't surprised that John Ryder took him the distance. And Ryder proved to be a tougher fight for him than Munguia and Berlanga was. Maybe John Ryder deserved more respect than a lot of fans in the West, in the United States and North America gave him. Anyway, so that whole card, what grade would you give that, guys? What grade would you give that card? Man, when you factor in that it was pay-per-view, I have to include that in my grade. It's hard to give that higher than a C. Maybe you go B- because some of the action was fun. It was a great atmosphere. The Mexican-American fans were awesome. They always are. And Canelo, he brings the heat when he fights on the Mexican holidays, man. I think he does even better business for Mexican Independence Day because that's the real Mexican holiday. Cinco de Mayo is some American shit, right? Cinco de Mayo is like St. Patrick's Day for Mexican people, in America is what I'm saying, right? It's like that day, everyone's Mexican. Just St. Patrick's Day, everyone's Irish. That's kind of what it is. And it's commercialized. But Mexican Independence Day is a big deal. And when he fights around that holiday, you got to think both of those Golovkin fights were around that holiday, right? He's had several of his biggest fights in September around that holiday. So it's no surprise to me that the rumors have it that fight did 600,000 pay-per-view buys. I didn't think it'd do north of 500,000. I thought it'd be right around 500,000. So the fact that it did more than that, did 600,000, it shows that Canelo is still king, right? A lot of people try to again, this isn't to beat up on anybody, but a lot of people try to say Javante Davis is the face of boxing. Well, he's not going to do half of that in his next fight, right? He's just not. So you got to give Canelo his props. He's still the top guy. He did a big gate. They sold a lot of tickets. My boy Jim Boone has been on the show a bunch of times. Ticket broker, the best ticket broker in the business, as far as I'm concerned. He had a good weekend. He was very, very happy. I'll just leave it there. He had a good weekend. So that card did big business. Canelo's still the top guy. However, pound for pound, yeah, not for me. Hey, baby. Uh-oh, someone's here to say hi. Someone wants to get on the show. Daddy? Yes. That's Daddy. That's you too. Can you say hi? Say hi. Can you say hi, everybody? Yeah, now you're going to get shy, huh? Can you just say hi? Oh, come on. You know how to say it. Can you blow a kiss to everyone? She freaks out as soon as she sees herself. It's okay, baby. Say hi. Oh, baby. Okay, sweetheart. Okay. It's okay, baby. Oh, poor. She got embarrassed. Okay. Mommy, will you get her? Jackie, it's okay, sweetheart. All right. We have officially entered the toddler phase. And that sound you just heard, I hear that about 20 to 30 times a day. That's for those of you out there who have kids, you've been there. You know exactly. Yeah, we've just entered that stage with Jackie. Okay. Don't worry, she'll be okay in about 30 seconds. All right, so that's it for what? News and rumors review. Hopefully I wasn't too harsh. I know a lot of people out there like, oh, Michael Montero does this complain. I don't think so. I do like to complain though. It's kind of fun. But I also like to give credit when credit's due. I mean, I like to do both. Okay. Let's talk about the heavyweight fight coming up today. So we got Anthony Joshua. I wanted to see here the weights. If they're on BoxRec. I pulled up BoxRec. Yeah, they're not there. Damn it. I don't feel like going to Twitter to find them. So I don't have the weights, guys. Oh, no, wait here. Daniel Dubois. Oh, they're playing it on here. Let me pull this up. Yeah, it stopped. Okay. Anyway, okay. When this matchup was first announced, I got really excited because I mean, you guys know I love heavyweights, but I think Anthony Joshua has carved out a really, really respectable career, a good resume, fought everybody in the division, just about, and the guys that were willing to fight him anyway. And he's won most, he's lost a few, but he's won most. There was one fluke loss. The other losses were to an all-time great. So I don't blame him for that. The fluke loss, look, those things happen, particularly at heavyweight. And he came back and avenged it in a rematch where he was dominant. He won every round. So you got to give this dude his credit. And then with Daniel Dubois, you know, he was stopped and against Joe Joyce, had an injury to his eye, kind of retired, you know, on a stool, if you will, figuratively in that fight. And a lot of people wrote him off after that. And even more people wrote him off after the Usyk fight when he was not able to follow up and capitalize on a moment where he had Usyk hurt, whether you felt it was legal or illegal, whatever, he clearly had Usyk hurt and he was not able to follow up on that moment. Since then, he's gone on a nice little run and he's had a couple of good wins, including against Hrgovic, who is a top 10 rated heavyweight. So Dubois has proven himself. He's not a people are calling him bum and all this stuff. That's not true. Is he elite? The jury's still out on that. Okay. But he's super young, still has a lot of time to learn. He had a limited amateur career. He's clearly learned on the job as a pro and gotten better. We've seen that in recent fights. And he's got some good tools. But he does get hit a lot. And Anthony Joshua is the taller, longer guy. He's also the vastly more experienced guy in this fight. Both of these guys have fought Alexander Usyk and lost. You know, Dubois did have a moment there, right, where he landed one shot. Again, you can debate whether the shot was legal or not, but he landed one shot and he had a moment. Other than that, he was completely dominated by Usyk. Didn't win a minute of a round other than the round where he landed that one body shot. Joshua in his two fights with Usyk, I thought he showed improvement in the second fight. He fought better in the second fight than he did in the first fight. And he had moments with an S, plural, moments in both fights. He never hurt Usyk or dropped him or anything like that, but he pushed him back at times and really made him work and earn that win. And he did multiple times. There was a couple times where Usyk went back to his corner where you could see him kind of say a prayer. And I know he does that a lot, but I'm just saying it was different. He had different energy, right? He sat down, took a real deep breath, and you could see he was trying to check in with himself like, okay, dude, step it up another level. Because he's, you know, that was a close round. Like you could just see him having that inner dialogue, right? Joshua was able to get there with Usyk. So that's something that Dubois wasn't able to do, right? So there's a different level between these two guys. And then I just want to scroll through Anthony Joshua's resume. And I'm not even going to mention like the results of these fights. I just want to give names, okay? An undefeated Dillian White, Vladimir Klitschko, Joseph Parker, Alexander Povetkin. I'm not even going to put Andy Ruiz in the mix. He doesn't really count. Alexander Usyk twice. And so he's fought a lot of top guys, really, really good fighters. And look, Dillian White, you know, yes, he's definitely not like you know, an elite level Hall of Fame level guy, but he did have some decent wins for a while there. Klitschko, of course, an all-time great. Joseph Parker, man, Anthony Joshua fought an undefeated Joseph Parker in 2018 and beat him to take his, I think Parker had the WBO belt. Man, that's an impressive, that win has aged really, really well. He fought Alexander Povetkin the same year. Povetkin had only lost to Vladimir Klitschko at that point, and he beat him, stopped him. That was a really, really good win. So he's had, listen, I just think in terms of his overall opponents, he's got a better resume than Tyson Fury. I really believe that. Fury was briefly the lineal heavyweight champion. He does have that distinction if you're a lineal nerd and into that shit. But you guys know my feelings about the Klitschko win for Fury. I put a asterisk next to that. Other than that, it's 2 wins over Deontay Wilder, who is extremely overrated here in the United States with the American Fight Press. And that's kind of it. Joshua's resume shits all over that. He's carved out a really, really good resume, man. He's 34 right now. That's right in the meat of like your prime years as a heavyweight, a modern day heavyweight. So if he wins this fight, look, this is for the IBF heavyweight title. We all know who the real champ is. It's the guy who beat both of these fighters pretty decisively, right? Alexander Usyk is the champion. But technically speaking, this fight is for a world title. And should Joshua win, he'll be a 3-time heavyweight champion. That's impressive. Now, in the modern era, we can, belts, they're throwing around like candy. Yeah. Okay, I got you. I'm just saying, technically speaking, 3-time heavyweight champion. Daniel Dubois, 27 years old. So he's got the youth advantage here, but he's the smaller guy. He's a big, powerful guy, but Anthony Joshua is even bigger and more powerful and also longer. And I think that reach is going to help Joshua early on. AJ is going to, in my opinion, try to box from the outside and box technically early and just jab the hell out of Dubois and wear him down and look for the knockout in the late rounds. I think that's what most people see in this fight. I think the common betting thread is Joshua late TKO or something, right? I don't know what the odds are, and I don't know where the best value is. I don't know where the over and under is, but we're going to find out. We're going to get more questions answered about Daniel Dubois in this fight than with Joshua. We basically know who Anthony Joshua is at this point, right? We know that if he gets in there against a guy like Alexander Usyk, he's probably going to come up a little bit short. Would have came up a little bit short against a prime Vladimir Klitschko. But against pretty much everybody else, he's got a real shot. And it would be favored against almost all of them at this point. We know who he is and what to expect. He does have power. He has shown the ability to get off the canvas and win fights. He has learned and gotten better as a pro. He's a veteran now. He's been in there with all the top guys, basically, that were willing to fight him. All the stuff I've mentioned, right? So we know who he is. Daniel Dubois, we've seen some good Dubois and some bad Dubois. He's looked good recently. His last 2 fights against Jarrell Miller, which, that win, it's a decent win, but probably not going to age well. And then Hrgovic, I think that's a good win. And he looked confident and strong in those 2 fights. So is this a new Daniel Dubois? Is this a grown-up, mature Daniel Dubois? Or did he just fight the right guys at the right time, right situation? We'll find out tonight. But we still have questions about him. So I'm actually more interested in seeing what he brings to the table tonight. So for my money, Dubois got a chance, but I think he's got to strike early. I think he has to come out and be aggressive in those early rounds and put some leather on Joshua. Try to back him up, try to get inside, try to get underneath AJ's length, and try to land something big. The straight punches probably won't get it done against Joshua. When you're a shorter guy throwing straight punches, it's hard to get that in there. He needs to kind of chop with his punches and come from angles, throw looping shots, get his head down, maybe loop upstairs, and maybe he can sneak a left hook in there or an uppercut or something during an exchange the way Andy Ruiz did. That's Dubois' best hope, I think. Land something like that early on, that gets Joshua in his head, because he is a kind of a nutcase up there. He's a little out there mentally, and you can get inside there and you can rattle his cage a bit. So if Dubois is able to land something big early, whether he puts Joshua down or not, if he just lands something big that visibly hurts Joshua and backs him up, it makes him grin in an insecure way. He does that insecure grin when he gets hit hard, right? If you see that, it might change the body language of the fight. It might give Dubois a chance to win some early rounds and do some damage that could change the fight. But I got to think that even if he has that moment, I just think Anthony Joshua's experience will carry him through. But if Dubois does have that big moment, we might see the Anthony Joshua that we saw in the rematch with Andy Ruiz, or his fight with Joseph Parker, where he boxed very cautiously and was totally content going the distance. We could see that Joshua. If Dubois doesn't have that moment early on and it's one-way traffic, I think we're going to see a more aggressive Joshua go for the kill and get a knockout, a stoppage, maybe in the middle to late rounds. That's the way I see this going. But if Dubois wants to stand in the center of the ring and box with Anthony Joshua, not going to work too well for him, in my opinion. All right, guys, that's how I see this. I thank you for hanging out with me a little bit. And I promise to get the phones back up next time. And yeah, we'll do another show. I promise you, we'll do another show definitely before Beterbiev Bivol. I definitely want to preview that fight. If we can get on next week, we'll try, but definitely before that fight. All right, guys. So enjoy the fight tonight. Enjoy your weekend, and see you at the fights. Peace.